So hello guys, I want to show how to use my stylus asset, and you could see this is how it looks. Nice fluffy, and obviously you could play around with the colors and all. This is like a second version. You can obviously change the textures like very easily. It takes like just a few seconds to do that. This is some other grass you could see. These are like 2 meters cubes just for references. You could see. And I am using a grass texture by kenny.nl, the foliage sprite, but obviously you could draw yourself or use the free foliage sprite pack too, which I'll show how to use it. So you could see this is how the grass looks, nice and fluffy. If I let's say move a bit, you could see the colors in different lightings. So let's start making it. I'm going to show first in low. When you do low, you could see no landscape grass, and that way you can kind of see how the landscape looks below. We do need to paint or use landscape for it so that the fluffiness looks good. For example, if I go to epic, you would see that this grass starts around here, but because it takes the color from the landscape, it looks like it's blending, like it's a one single stuff, and that's what makes it look fluffy, like no shadows and taking the color from the bottom. So first we will be using first we will be making the landscape so that we can use it for our grass. So to add it to your project, you could use the fab plugin. I haven't installed it, but you could use it from here, or go to fab, search for the product. I haven't uploaded it yet because I still have to get approval, but once it gets approved, it would be something like this, where you can just go to the fab plus, click add to project, and then choose like your project and do add to project. You could also do show all project if it does not show yours, and also choose the latest version. Once you have done this, you will have this file in the content called Stylized grass by Mayu. Also, one more thing I want you guys to know, that if you go to my channel, you will find how I made all of this from scratch, from start. So if you want to learn how I made from start and in lot more detail, you could watch these videos, like the easy autoclave materials. If you go down the stylized grass, and then stylus landscape with autoclave materials, and then obviously this one too, make landscape material like peak. So all these 4 videos are what I used to make like landscape and grasses. So you can actually just check that if you want to learn a bit more in detail how to make this. Now in the stylus grass pack, we will have a levels, which is this level. We have grass. Basically this is like first 2 designs for grass. For example, if I go to my this one, and let me just show you guys. So first I'll show about landscape. So this is the landscape layer info is just for the painting stuff. This is materials, RVT. Basically it creates a texture based on the painting, like based on, if I show you this, if you go to top, it basically takes like a screenshot like this and then creates a texture dynamically. This is all something that we need to make in this video. Texture is just an extra texture that you could add for some variation. So if we go to material, and if I go to my stylus landscape, if I go down to the landscape grass, let me show. So I can choose the grass one to apply, and now I have a different grass. It's the same that is around here. This is different grass. You could obviously make yourself too. And then there's a rounded grass, and you could see this is how the rounded grass is. I'm going to use the LGT grass too by default. So this is what I have in the landscape grass tab. You could see grass 1, grass 2. Material instances are material instances for the first grass, second grass, second grass, mesh. And this texture is used for like both grass. The only difference is how the mesh is made. Then in the rounded grass, it's the same stuff, you could see, but it's the different materials, mesh and texture. And then shared asset is basically the main material grass. So all of these are using instances, right? For example, these are using instances, so it's in here. Some changes might happen based on what I get like from the Fab marketplace. Sometimes they say that you have to create this type of folder and all, but you would kind of understand it based on just checking this. This is just a mesh for the size reference, and this is a texture. This is a common texture that I use. Like in the R there is this noise pattern, there is this pattern, and in the B there's this pattern. And this is a grass scratches, which I'll explain later. So how about we get started? First of all, I have a folder called tutorial. So I'm just going to go into my content browser too, so that I can simply just switch between the asset folder and then my folder. And let's call it level, and let's create a new level. First thing, we will create our landscape. I'm just going to make it small, but again, it's your choice how big you want to make it. And then in the environment light mixer, if you don't see any of the tabs, then basically just go to window and search for the name. So you could see this is the one that I'm using. So if you do not see any tabs around here, then simply just search in Windows, and you would see that this is how our landscape is right now. I am going to start copying stuff. So I'm just going to do a landscape folder, and from my this one landscape material, I'm going to copy the master material and paste it in here. Let's create a material instance and basically give it to our landscape. Okay, now nothing's showing up obviously because we need to go to our landscape and then go to paint and basically click on this icon. It will create all these layers. If you don't know where these layers are created by, then go to this M. So you could see these are the landscape layers. So grass, remove, grass 2, grass 3, dirt. So you could see. So let's create our first landscape info. Basically it stores the where it is painted and all. If you do plus, you can basically create a new folder, or basically it will automatically create a new folder for in the like level part. It's your choice. Now in the past, before I think 5.5, when you used to do this plus and create it, it used to automatically paint it everywhere. The first one that you created, it used to automatically paint it. I don't know if there's some issue with 5.6 or more. I'm using 5.7 right now, which I believe there's some issue with the landscape stuff, or maybe something they changed. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to click on this one, because if you select this and then paint, you have to select the grass layer. If you paint, you will have to do it this way, right? So instead we will select this and basically click and drag. Make sure the tool strength is 1, okay? That way we are painting the full size. I'll also reduce the quality. Also the landscape grass, the amount it shows is also dependent on which quality you're using, okay? And you could see right now we painted it fully and our grass is showing, but it's simply not being visible, or not visible, sorry, it's not being smooth. Like you could see there's a, if I can just go like this, you would see there's a black pattern in here. So in the material, what I actually do is this black pattern or this black color is actually replaced by the color that is below it, like around here. So whatever color is around here, it will automatically take that color and basically paint this much area. That way it looks like part of it. So what we have to first do is we need to create RVT, but before that let me show some stuff. So you could see as soon as I painted the grass, it automatically adds this what you call like this grass wherever I painted, and that is handled by this one. And you could see that I'm using this landscape grass node, and what we are basically saying that wherever is the layer grass, you could see add it. Same with grass 2 and grass 3, we are basically adding all of this, so that wherever we paint our grass 2, grass 3 and grass, it will basically show this grass. If I do this for the dirt layer, for dirt layer I haven't really done much. You could see it's just one color. you could change the texture or add anything in here. It's just for reference, okay? And I can go in here and then basically paint, and you could see some issue that even though I'm painting, let me go to low, even though I'm painting, it's not actually replacing the previous landscape material, like this grass one. And I think this is bug in 5.6 or 5.7, or I don't know if they changed something. I've went on Reddit and all, and everybody's complaining about it. But basically in the past, what used to happen is when you paint another layer, it used to just replace, it would used to remove anything else, okay? So what we need to do is we need to select the grass layer, and if you press shift, you could actually delete like this. You could see you could delete. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to manually delete using shift like this, my grass layer, and then the dirt layer I'm manually going to paint it. I don't know if it's a bug or not, or if something is changed, but for now this is the way I do it. And then if I go to high, you would see that it's not actually creating the landscape grass in the dirt layer. So grass 2, grass 3 I'll do later and explain to you guys later, but for now let's see how we can actually make the bottom color be same as the landscape color. So the first thing first, we need to create a runtime virtual texture. So let's go to our folder for landscape. I will create RVT. RVT is nothing but a texture that is dynamically painted, okay, based on the landscape or whatever you prefer. Make sure in the project setting virtual texture is enabled. Without that it would not work. This one is enabled. So let's search for runtime virtual texture. I'll call it RVT base landscape base color. Landscape base color. Now if I click on it, you would see I have a lot more options. So I can actually store a lot more. Like I can store normal, roughness, specular. I can also store world height. You get basically black and white mask based on the height of the landscape. For me, I only want base color, so we will just choose base color so that we do not require much processing. And then this is basically the size of it. So if you want, you could increase it. If you want, you could lower it. It's up to you. Now the way you choose is you go to the landscape color, you choose your landscape. So the way it works is the landscape, you have to add it to your landscape this component. Basically search for virtual texture. It will still draw in virtual texture. So we want to draw something in this texture. So if you click plus and add this, this is what is getting added. And then you need to click on create volume, and it will basically create this volume for you, and which like covers your whole landscape. You could see it covers your whole landscape. Let's see if I go back and come back, you'd see it's actually showing the same texture. You could see there's a brown spot around here. Sometimes it might not update around here. I don't know why. Sometimes it's update, sometimes it doesn't, but it doesn't matter as long as you did everything properly. And one more thing that I want to show before I proceed is, let's say if I go to my landscape, if I go to sculpt, and if I sculpt something like this, so I'm sculpting right now, I'm going up and up, and suddenly you would see that the slope has been visible because that's how I've made. I should make this be a bit more powerful. And you could see that wherever I draw this, autoclave is created for us like this. So this is something that I have already shown in the autoclave video, but I'll explain how to customize this. But now one issue that happens is if I go to my landscape virtual volume, you would see that it actually is smaller. So if I go back like this, you would see there's a black spot in here wherever I made this. We don't want that. So every time you make some changes, go to your runtime virtual volume and make sure you go down and say set bounds, and it will automatically be the size of it. So you only have to do it if you sculpt something that is like bigger than the volume. If you make it smaller sculpt, then as long as it covers, it doesn't matter. But because it's now big, this was bigger, I have to do set bounds, and you could see it's updated now. Okay, so we already created a virtual texture base color. So what we need to do is we need to go into this grass material. So I have the grass material around here, and I know I'm using the second version, so here. I'm using the second version. I'll just double click it. You basically should copy this into your own folder so that you have much more organized stuff, but I'm quickly going to do in here. So before that, let me show some stuff for the grass stuff. So you could see that if I move this, I can change the offset like this. This one is the top color, so whatever is the top color. If you want, you could just make it fully like this, but instead of that, I will show a better option so that you have less calculations. This also basically changes the power or the smoothness of it, you could see, and this one basically changes the offset. Then we have grass texture. Obviously you could change any texture around here if you have. So actually I have this Kenny foliage sprite. It's a free that you could just get from the kenny.nl website, and you could use like any one of them, or you could just make it yourself too. It's completely okay. For example, let's say I want to use this one. I can simply just drag and drop in here and add it around here, and you could see suddenly it's using this texture for me like this. You could obviously make it yourself too. So let me just delete this. Then we have RVT landscape, and this is where we would add our RVT. So if I go to my content browser, RVT, I can basically choose this, and you could see suddenly it's starting to show whatever the bottom color is around here. You can see if I do, let's say, hide this, let's say this is how our landscape looks by default. But as soon as I go to higher versions, you'll see now it starts to show the color which is at the bottom around here, and you basically get this fluffy look around here. And now it just comes down to like which top color that you want. You could see this is the top color. There's wind intensity, like how fast the wind is, wind speed. This is intensity, speed. The weight gradient is basically right now the way it is used is the bottom color is stuck and the top is moving, and this basically allows you to change it a bit. So if I go to my, like, say, master material, and if I show you guys this wind weight mask, if I connect it to the base color, you can see that this is where this is black, and as we go forward it's white, and wherever it's black it would basically not move because that's the weight, and wherever there's white it would move the highest, wherever there's gray it would move the lowest. So if I do something like this, it would not move this part. Obviously it depends on the what you call, like, how many subdivisions or vertices there are. So if there are not many, then it would not work like as smoothly, but obviously you do not want that for optimization. And this one is basically the smoothness and all. So let me just connect back. Now one more thing is, let's say if you want to have like the full color, instead of having this at the top, you want this to be full color. You might think that I should probably just, you know, turn this to full like this, and it would do that. But instead of that, if you want to use, you know, full color like this, then what I would actually suggest is go into the main code, the main Stylized grass, and basically just connect it directly like this, the RVT. This is basically RVT landscape, and if you do that, it will basically just use the full color as the ground. So you could say it uses the full color as the ground. From the top you cannot even see it, but you could see like this. So if you do not want to have that gradient, then basically just connect it directly. That way you also reduce the calculations. So we got the stylized look, and we also got some of the stuff. Now one thing is, if I show you guys if I go to the, let's say, grass mesh, if I show you the first mesh, if I remove the material, you would see this is how the mesh looks. You could see there's a back face culling happening around here. But this is the second mesh, which is just a cross right now. Okay. So you can tell that right now we are using the cross one. So you could see that we are now using the cross one, and you can actually use the cross one for like a lot more stuff because it works perfectly for majority of the textures. But if you are using something like this one, then you will need to make some changes, I think so. Now let me show some more landscape customization. So if we go to our material instance, if I go to the low so that we do not see the grass, we can choose our grass one color. So you could see we can choose our grass 2 color like this, and then grass 3, grass 4 we haven't painted yet, so I'll show soon. If you click on it and just enable it, you would see that there's a grass plates like a texture around here. If you watch the video for this one, how to create material like peak, you would understand it, but basically just let you guys know that there's a grass pattern around here happening like this. And then I have noise pattern, so this one you could basically add your own noise to. So if I go to my landscape texture folder, or where is it, in the landscape texture, I have an extra texture that you could try. I didn't like it, so I just still kept it in here, you could see. Then we have the noise styling, which you could go, and if you let's say do 100, if you do let's say 100, you would see that this texture is repeated by I think 100 centimeters. If you do 1500, it's basically like 1500 centimeters. Then this is the cliff color. This is basically the auto cliff material, which is this one, the first color and the second color. This is basically the noise pattern that you could add around here. The cliff noise styling, obviously if I do 100, you would see it's repeating like this. Then we have height max, so you could see I can play around with the height max and all. I have height minimum, so where it should start and all. And then the slope contrast is basically, if you look at this edge, you could see around this edges, if I make this like very sharp, it will basically turn into this sharp angle. But if you do let's say negative, you can kind of create some patterns like this. If you go to the landscape material, the main one, if I show you guys the cliff part, this cliff part which is actually getting added around, let me see, this one like slope blend tiling and all. I'll explain it a bit, but there's an extra texture that I've added. It didn't feel like it would be important to have a parameter for it, but I'll explain what it does soon. Let's go one by one. This is basically that ground color like I showed before. Then we have camera fade length. So you could see one thing, that right now we can only see this noise pattern till here, but it looks simple around here. So if I make let's say this one to be 50,000, it looks way too messy right now, you could see. But if I keep it to be something like 5,000, it only shows till now, till here, and obviously you could make it 1000 and it will only be close to us like this. Okay, so if you check the peak video, you would understand why I did that, and it also looks better instead of having noise pattern everywhere. Then the slope blend tiling, I don't know why I haven't added it in the cliff part, but at the edges, if I let's say make this 50, you would see that. So what I'm basically doing is I'm adding a texture around here to create some nice pattern, like instead of have some irregularities basically, and it is controlled by this texture. So if you make 10, you would see that it's like this is how it looks. Let's keep it 200. And then the grass leaf color is basically, I should probably change it, but if you go in here, enable this, you can change the grass leaf color like this. I don't know, I haven't really made it nicer, I think. And then when you enable this, when you enable the grass leaf pattern, you would also get the option to change the texture. So that is mainly what's available in the landscape part. But before we proceed, I will actually show how to paint the landscape grass even better. So let's go to our landscape, go to our paint, and I have grass 2. So let's create our new layer info. There's also option around here which basically does is, if you select this and do all layers, it will automatically create layer info for everyone. But I like to do manually so that we only are doing for the one that we are using, instead of anything that we are not using, we don't do anything. So now if I go to the grass tool, I can basically paint, and you could see it's not actually been visible, you could see, and that is something to do with, I need to remove this one by pressing shift. And I don't know if it's bug or anything, but in the past you would be able to just paint it and it will automatically replace the other ones. I think it is based on layer right now, like which is top layer and all, but I don't know why they have done it this way. It used to work like way too much better before. So you could paint like this. I'm just going to replace everything, okay, like this. So obviously let me just quickly do some stuff. So let me just delete this much area and then do grass around here, and then obviously for this one too, like grass around here. Okay, I think it is something to do with which is up. Never mind. Nope, nothing's happening. I don't know if it's plugins like the 5.7 or not. If I go to high, you would see that this area is, the grass is also like this, and the grass is around here like this. So what we will do is we will go to our low setting so that we don't see any grass. I'm going to delete everything like this. Go and give this our basic grass material, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this brush, and it allows us to use a texture. And this texture I've provided in the landscape texture. You could obviously add your own one too. And what this basically does is, let me delete this much area first. Again, this is kind of annoying that I have to delete again and again. If I select this grass, you would see that it automatically creates this noise pattern. It actually keeps moving around like this. Now obviously we are using like way too small for it to actually work properly, but if I, let's say, delete everything, paint like this, and make my brush size to be very high. So if I, let's say, go up, okay, let me go and make it up. Let's also go to our landscape. Where is it? Go to our material instance landscape and basically make our camera fade to be like high, so that we can see it properly like this for temporary. And what we are going to do is we are going to make our noise pattern brush very high like this. I'm going to go into and click few more times. So I'm doing left click for the grass, and you could see nothing showing because this is on top, right? So I'm going to go in here and do left shift and then do left clicks. I'm not holding. If you hold, it would not look good. I'm just doing some clicks, okay? And it is important that we use like lower tool strength instead of using full size like this. Basically it would create nice patterns. I'm also going to just paint this grass green, grass 2. I know it's not being visible, but I guess for now in 5.7 I have to kind of do it this way, no other option. So basically this grass 2 exists, but it's below this one. So if I go to grass, I just have to do left clicks like this by holding shift. Maybe make it a bit more stronger like this, and I'm just doing left taps, okay? I'm not holding it. I'm doing left taps like this. And then let's go back to our grass 2, and then I don't know, grass, and do left clicks again. Just create like new patterns, and then just do tap 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 tap. Just remove something again, just holding shift, without holding shift, all that stuff. The annoying part is it's still being visible a bit instead of completely being hidden. So if I add something like this, just do tap tap, and then I'm doing quickly, but in the other one I was putting more effort to create some nice patterns. Okay, let's see how this looks. So right now this is how our grass looks. So if I go into our epic, you would see that we get like nicer patterns now. Instead of having the same repeating stuff, we get some cool nice patterns. Accidentally stopped the recording and I did some changes without realizing that I wasn't recording. So I was around here, which was remove this one. I just did plus and added layer info. And what that basically does is, if I go in here and then paint it, you would see it still does not remove the grass that is added on here, but that is because we need to remove this layer. Okay, so I'm going to remove this layer. Let me first remove everything to show that it should be completely black. Okay, at least for now. I think when they fix it, or if I find something that is in the newer version, I'll explain in the comments, pinned comment, or I'll update this stuff. But for now you have to manually delete like each layer, which is stupid, and then we can basically paint it like this. Okay, and what this one does is it uses the same texture as the landscape but without the grass. You can see it does not spawn the grass on here like this. Another thing, same with this one, you could see there's a grass happening around here. Actually, never mind, I actually fixed it. But what in the past it was something like this, I think. Not in the past, like few minutes in for you guys, but it was something like this. So I had to remove all the other layers by holding shift and only have the dirt layer. That way it never showed this stuff. Another thing is, some of the grass was actually being visible like this on the cliff. The way I fixed it is by simply, if I go to the landscape material and connect this part, okay, so if I go in here and then connect this part to the base color, you would see that wherever there is white, it is basically going to create the grass. So you could see where it is black, it will not create, but this should not be white, right? And that is simply because in the main material, this cliff part, this slope part is actually handled around here, and it is only applied to the layer grass. It is not applied to this and this. So if you want, you would actually create extra LURPs for each one of this grass node. So like just connect, just like copy this much, like this much, and then basically paste it around here. And then this one would basically connect it to the A part, and the B would always be this much, and alpha would also be this much, but just connect this one to A, and then this one would be in your grass pattern. And then same for this one, just duplicate it, connect this around here and connect this to the grass too. But for now I'm keeping it like this, and you could see that we are basically adding grass 1, grass 2, grass 3, and then we are subtracting the slope. But for some reason it is not automatically working. So what you need to do is, it used to work in the past, okay, which is why I'm also a bit confused because I'm using 5.7. You could just go to grass 2 and then do shift and then basically remove this one from here, and you could see you have to click on the vertices like this. Make sure grass 4 is also grass 3 is also removed, so it's pure black like this, and this way it would not spawn it on the cliff part. I'll try to see if there's any fix in future, but for now this is how you have to do it, okay? And now there would be no grass on here. Also for the grass, rounded grass, it's everything same. If you go to the mesh, you would see that it's actually just the cross pattern again, and everything else is same. If you go to the grass types, landscape grass types, if you go in here, you can actually control the density, the scaling of it, what the scaling and what the mesh is. You could also click plus and have multiple grass types. This is basically used by the landscape grass material around here to add the grass. I also showed foliage, I think. So if you go to the foliage, if you go in here and then basically, let me just go to low so that I can show quicker. So if you go and start painting by using this mesh, click around here, choose your density and all. If you paint, I need to be in like higher settings, so you can see this is how it looks. But the issue is it does not look proper, right? And that is because we don't want any shadow. So if you go in here and disable the shadow, you can see now it creates fluffy. stylized grass like this. So that's all. If you want to use foliage, if you want to make it yourself, it's up to you. Landscape grass basically creates it automatically for you guys like this. But again, if you want to manually do it, you could do it too. I think that's all left. If you have any message, just leave it in comments. I also created a Patreon, but I haven't really added much on it because it's new. But that's a way you can support me. And this is also free. I also created a free VFX pack that you could just get it. It's like a very basic pack. And I think that's all for this video. Goodbye and thanks for watching.